The words sliced through the Thanksgiving air like a knife. Women don't belong in business discussions, especially unemployed ones like you. My father-in-law, William Nelson, didn't even glance in my direction as he reached across the table for the wine bottle, dismissing me with the casual cruelty of someone swatting away an insect. The crystal glasses on the formal dining table caught the chandelier light, transforming it into dozens of tiny prisms that suddenly burned into my retinas. A strange pressure built in my chest as I watched my husband Elliot freeze beside me, fork suspended midway to his mouth, saying absolutely nothing while his mother nodded in agreement and his brother Jason smirked across the polished mahogany. What none of them knew was that the unemployed housewife they were dismissing had just signed a contract that afternoon worth $8.4 million to their struggling manufacturing company. My name is Laura, I'm 34 and a logistics company CEO. This is the story of how I turned their assumptions into their greatest vulnerability. The Nelson family dinner table was a battlefield disguised as a holiday gathering. 17 relatives crowded around the extended table in their sprawling Connecticut estate. Elliot's mother, Olivia, had spent days preparing the perfectly roasted turkey, arranging the fine china, and polishing family silver that had been passed down for generations. I was the only one who didn't belong. Elliot, after dinner, we need to discuss the Henderson account, William continued, cutting his turkey with aggressive precision. Just the men. We'll use my study. Dad, maybe we should include, Elliot started, his voice barely audible. Jason cut him off with practiced efficiency. Include who? Your wife. He laughed, his face already flushed from his third glass of wine. What's she going to contribute? Tips on grocery shopping? Olivia smiled at me with manufactured sweetness. I'm sure Laura understands. Business is so boring for women anyway. We can discuss the charity gala while the men work. I sipped my wine slowly, letting the expensive Bordeaux coat my throat while a bitter taste gathered beneath it. My phone vibrated against my thigh, the screen illuminating through the fabric of my dress. A message from my executive assistant, Fiona. I'd told her earlier to contact me with any urgent updates while I attended the family dinner, even though I normally kept business and family separate. Mrs. Nelson, I'm seeing concerning activity on the Nelson manufacturing account. Their CFO just sent over Q4 projections. They're worse than we thought. Should I prepare the contract termination paperwork? My thumb hovered over the screen. One word from me and Nelson Manufacturing would lose their largest client. The client that represented 73% of their annual revenue. The client that had kept them afloat for the past 18 months while every other manufacturer dropped them for cheaper overseas options. The client run by me. Laura, are you even listening? Olivia's voice snapped like a rubber band. I was saying you could help organize the silent auction. You have so much free time after all. Sorry, just checking a message, I said, placing my phone face down on the table. William's fork stabbed the air for emphasis. See, this is exactly why women shouldn't be in business. Always distracted by their phones and their little social plans. When we're in that study, phones go away. We focus. That's what separates successful men from everyone else. Jason raised his glass. To successful men and the women who support them by staying in their lane. Several relatives laughed and raised their glasses while Elliot seemed to shrink beside me, his attention fixed on his mashed potatoes as though they contained the secrets of the universe. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Fiona. Their CFO is calling me directly. He sounds panicked. Says they need to discuss adjusting contract terms for next quarter. Translation, they can't afford our current pricing. What should I tell him? I typed back, tell him all contract discussions go through me personally. I'll call him Monday. Laura phones away, Olivia said sharply. It's rude. Of course. My apologies. I slipped the phone into my purse, but not before sending one final message to Fiona. Pull a complete file on Nelson Manufacturing. Every contract, every payment record, every communication for the past 18 months. I want it on my desk first thing Monday morning. William launched into a story about a deal he'd closed in the 1990s, his voice booming across the table. That's how business is done. Firm handshakes, man-to-man negotiations, none of this email and text message nonsense. You look someone in the eye, you make a deal, and you honor it. Absolutely, Jason agreed, nodding vigorously. That's why Nelson Manufacturing has survived for 40 years. Dad built it on relationships and integrity. The words bubbled up from some deep reservoir of patience that had finally run dry. Actually, I said quietly, setting down my wine glass with deliberate care, Nelson Manufacturing has survived the past 18 months because of Nelson Logistics Solutions. The table went silent. William's fork stopped midair, suspended in the sudden vacuum of sound. What did you say? He asked, the first tremor of uncertainty in his voice. Nelson Logistics Solutions, I repeated, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand. The supply chain management company that handles all your warehousing, distribution, and freight coordination. The company that negotiated rates with your suppliers when you couldn't afford to pay them anymore. The company that extended you credit terms when your bank refused. Jason stared at me, confusion warping his features. What does that have to do with anything? Everything, I said calmly. Because I own Nelson Logistics Solutions. I'm the CEO, founder, and majority shareholder. You could have heard a pin drop on the Persian rug beneath our feet. Elliot's head snapped toward me. Laura, what? Nelson Logistics Solutions, I repeated. I started it 6 years ago, 2 years before I met Elliot. We began with small regional clients, built a reputation for solving impossible logistics problems, and scaled to become one of the top 15 supply chain companies in the Northeast. Olivia's face had gone pale, her hand clutching her napkin as though it might anchor her to reality. That's impossible. You don't work. You're home all day. I work from home, I corrected. I have a dedicated office in our house. The one Elliot thinks I use for hobbies. I run a company with 140 employees across 4 regional offices. We did $47 million in revenue last year. William had set down his silverware. His hands were shaking slightly. You're lying. Am I? I pulled out my phone, ignoring Olivia's sharp intake of breath. I opened my email and turned the screen toward William. This is the contract your CFO signed 18 months ago. $8.4 million annually for comprehensive logistics management. You were 3 weeks from bankruptcy when you signed it. Your previous logistics company had dropped you. Your suppliers were demanding cash on delivery, and your biggest client had just cancelled a $6 million order. Jason grabbed the phone, staring at the screen. His face transitioned from red to white like a traffic light. Dad, this is our account. Our biggest account. Nelson Manufacturing was drowning, I continued, my voice steady. I came to Elliot's company Christmas party, met his family, heard William talking about the business struggles. I went back to my office and had my team analyze your situation. We could solve your problems, but you were too proud to work with an unknown company. So I had my CFO reach out to yours directly. We pitched a comprehensive solution at 40% below market rate. Why would you do that? William whispered, the question barely audible. Because I loved your son, I said simply. And I knew the business meant everything to your family. I thought I was helping. Elliot's hand found mine under the table. Laura, I had no idea. You never told me. You never asked what I did all day, I said gently. You assumed I was organizing closets and planning dinner parties, which I also do, by the way. I'm capable of both. I deliberately kept the company name similar but different enough that you wouldn't make the connection, and I used my maiden name professionally to maintain the separation. My home office has a separate business line, and I take most video calls when you're at work. Fiona's timing was perfect. My phone rang, her name flashing on the screen. I answered on speaker. Yes, Fiona? Mrs. Nelson, I have Nelson Manufacturing's CFO on the other line. He's requesting an emergency meeting. He says their Q4 numbers are worse than projected and they need to renegotiate contract terms immediately. Should I schedule something? Every eye at the table was on me. What kind of renegotiation is he requesting? I asked. He's asking for extended payment terms, reduced service fees, and a 6-month deferment on outstanding invoices. Basically, he wants us to provide the same services for significantly less money while they try to land new clients. I looked at William. His face had gone grey. Jason was staring at his plate as though it contained his future. Tell him I'll review the request and get back to him Monday morning, I said. And Fiona, pull our complete contract. I want to review our termination clauses. Termination? William choked out the word like a bone caught in his throat. I ended the call. Your company is in trouble, William. Real trouble. The Henderson account you're meeting about tonight? I already know they're leaving. They told my sales team 2 weeks ago. They're switching to overseas manufacturing because you can't match the pricing anymore. How do you know that? Jason demanded, his voice pitched higher than usual. Because Henderson Industries is also my client. I manage their logistics for their entire East Coast operation. When they told me they were dropping Nelson Manufacturing, I tried to talk them out of it. But your quality control has slipped. Your delivery times have increased and your pricing isn't competitive. Olivia was crying silently, mascara tracing dark rivulets down her carefully powdered cheeks. Elliot squeezed my hand tighter. Why are you telling us this? William asked, his voice broken. Because for 18 months I've been subsidizing your business, I said. My company has been charging you 40% below our standard rates. We've absorbed delays, expedited shipments at our cost, and covered your mistakes with our reputation. I did it because you're my husband's family. I did it because I thought eventually you'd see me as more than just Elliot's unemployed wife. We didn't know, Olivia whispered. You didn't want to know, I corrected. Every time Elliot mentioned my work, you changed the subject. Every time I tried to discuss business at family gatherings, you steered the conversation to recipes and decorating. You decided I was irrelevant, so you never looked deeper. Jason had his phone out, frantically typing. Dad, she's telling the truth. I'm looking at Nelson Logistics Solutions website. Laura Nelson, CEO and founder. There are articles about her in Industry Week, Supply Chain Management Review, Forbes. Forbes? William repeated numbly. They profiled me last year, I said. Northeast's rising stars in logistics management. You never read it because you assumed it had nothing to do with you. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Fiona, their CFO is now calling me every 5 minutes. He sounds desperate. What are your intentions? I looked around the table at the family who had dismissed me for 3 years. At the women who'd pitted me for being unemployed. At the men who'd excluded me from business discussions because I supposedly couldn't understand their world. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. Monday morning, I'm meeting with my executive team to review the Nelson Manufacturing account. We are going to make a decision about whether to continue the contract, renegotiate terms, or terminate the relationship entirely. Laura, please. William's voice cracked. We need you. The company needs you. I know, I said. That's the problem. You've needed me for 18 months, but you didn't know it. And now that you know, I have to decide if I want to continue being treated like I'm invisible while simultaneously keeping your business afloat. Elliot spoke for the first time since the revelation. Laura, I'm so sorry. I should have asked. I should have known. Yes, I agreed. You should have. But you didn't because, like everyone else at this table, you assumed that a woman who works from home isn't really working. That a wife who makes dinner and organizes the household couldn't possibly be running a multi-million-dollar company. Olivia reached across the table, her jewelry catching the light. We were wrong. Terribly wrong. Please don't punish the business because of our ignorance. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm making a business decision. Nelson Manufacturing is a struggling client that requires more resources than they're currently paying for. The only reason I've tolerated it is family loyalty. But after tonight, after being told once again that I don't belong in business discussions, I have to question whether that loyalty is deserved. William stood up slowly, his napkin falling to the floor. What would it take to keep the contract? I considered the question, feeling the weight of 3 years of dismissal and underestimation. Respect, I said finally. Acknowledgement that I'm not just Elliot's wife. That I'm a business owner, a CEO, someone whose expertise has value. And maybe, just maybe, an apology for 3 years of condescension. You have it, William said immediately. All of it. I apologize completely and sincerely. I was wrong about you. Wrong to exclude you. Wrong to diminish what you do. Jason stood up too. I'm sorry, Laura. I've been a complete ass. Olivia nodded, tears streaming down her face. We all have. Please forgive us. I looked at Elliot, my husband who I loved, who had never once thought to ask about my work because he had assumed there was nothing to ask about. I need time to think, I said, standing up. I'm going to head home. Elliot, you should stay and have your business meeting. Talk about the Henderson account, discuss strategy, plan for the future. I'll see you later. Laura, wait, Elliot started. I'm not leaving you, I said softly. I'm just leaving this dinner. I need space to think about what happens next. With the business, with the family, with us. I grabbed my purse and walked out of the Nelson family dining room, leaving behind a table of stunned relatives and a half-eaten turkey dinner that suddenly seemed like the most irrelevant thing in the world. My phone rang before I reached my car. Fiona? Nelson Manufacturing's CFO is insisting on an immediate response. What should I tell him? I sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, looking back at the beautiful Connecticut estate. Through the windows, I could see the family gathered around William, everyone talking at once. Elliot and I lived in our own home 15 minutes away, a comfortable distance that now felt symbolic of the space between us. Tell him, I said slowly, that Nelson Logistics Solutions will honor the existing contract through the end of the fiscal year. After that, we'll discuss new terms at market rates. If Nelson Manufacturing wants to continue our relationship, they'll pay what our services are actually worth. And tell him that all future negotiations will be conducted with me directly, not through intermediaries who don't know I own the company. Understood. And for what it's worth, you handled that like a boss. I smiled. I am a boss, Fiona. It's about time everyone else figured that out. I drove home to the house I shared with Elliot, to the office he thought I used for hobbies, to the life I'd built while everyone was too busy underestimating me to notice. Monday morning would bring difficult conversations, contract negotiations, family discussions, decisions about the future. But tonight, I was going to sit in my office, review my company's quarterly reports, and remind myself that I didn't need anyone's permission to be successful. I'd been successful all along. They just hadn't been paying attention. 3 months later, Elliot and I renewed our vows in a small private ceremony. We'd spent countless hours in marriage counseling, rebuilding trust and communication. Nelson Manufacturing survived, barely, with a restructured contract at market rates and William's reluctant agreement to bring me onto their advisory board. My company continued to thrive, now with my husband's genuine support and interest. Some relationships can't survive revelations of this magnitude, but ours grew stronger through the crisis. Elliot wasn't just paying attention now, he was genuinely seeing me for the first time.